Good morning. It's day 5. It's actually happening. Monday morning. Feels different when it's all about chess. But I did have some guests over at the weekend, so it did feel like a proper weekend. And I ended up not posting at all on Saturday or Sunday. It is in my nature to be quite harsh with myself, but it is something I've practiced to not be. So I'm okay with the fact that I didn't post yesterday or the day before, and I didn't do any chess yesterday, so that's fine. But it's on day 5. It's day 4. That was day 4 of a year of chess. How can you not do chess? That's the whole point. You've quit your job. What are you doing? That's the thought. They're the thoughts, but they're not. They're not winning. They're not the winning thoughts. I have some more rational thoughts to compete with those thoughts. So it's going to be about tactics. I'm going to make a plan today. This is quite wobbly, isn't it? Okay, let's calm. That bit was very wobbly. So in the next couple of weeks-ish, probably a bit more, but at least the next couple of weeks, I am going to be focusing on tactics. Probably going to be doing a lot of a particular app which I mentioned, and I will go into more detail later today. CT Art 4.0. It is a wonderful app. Well, no, it's a wonderful set of exercises with some good features, but it's quite an old. It's like software developed in the 90s, that kind of vibe. They still have a photo of like an old box you'd used to buy if you used to buy like Windows 98 or XP or something. Their image of their software is a big box like that. Like, hey, you can buy this big pack of software. Look, it's in a box. But their app's very good, no doubt. It's probably the best tactics app available. So you have to accept those quirks. And there's a book by Lichess Rapid, which I've got, which I'll be reading. And then I'll probably be doing either Lichess Puzzle Storm or just Lichess Random Puzzles. And I'll go into more details as to what decisions have led to that. What thought processes have led to that decision? I need to be informed. And then, aside from tactics, I want to be playing more games as well. So probably some combination of rapid games and classical games. So I'm thinking one classical game a day, and then maybe some rapid games in amongst those. I'm feeling pretty good in and of myself. So each morning I go to a local reservoir, get on a wetsuit and jump in. Well, I don't jump in, I very carefully walk in with my bare feet and looking like someone who's learning to walk. But it gives me a right kick and I feel very good. So this is me post-swim. I originally thought I would film this on the way to the swim, but I would just be sort of like that, and I wouldn't have any sort of energy, which would be not very entertaining to watch. One thing I'm really enjoying about this experiment so far is that already from the videos I've posted, I've had comments from people where they've noticed some errors in what I said. So for instance, I moved my knight here and that's fine for white. And then someone said actually it's not. What's wrong with pushing a pawn, attacking that original knight, pushing the pawn again, and you lose a knight? another game where I said my opponent loses a pawn with no compensation. Someone saw my comment in my study and they said actually that opponent does have compensation, because if they'd have played the best move, which was to then try and track down your queen, it's a classic line. Oh goodness me. Hello. So many people walking in the road with their dogs. Yeah, so there's this classic line where the queen is hunted down and maybe not trapped, but she has to spend some time, and so therein lies the compensation. So it's been good. I've enjoyed this side of the project so far. All right, let's get inside and play some chess.
Okay, plan for the week. Next 7 days, what should I be doing? It should be tactics. Almost certainly. Almost everything I do, winning, losing in chess at the moment, is heavily influenced by tactics. It's usually just a case of miscalculation. I didn't notice that they could do this, which led to that. And at my level, that's quite common, I think. Tactics decide games. So, I am going to introduce you to a couple of experts who, they're not here, but I'm going to point you to their videos. And they are Dr. Anique de Bruin, who is a professor of self-regulation, and we have Dr. Benjamin Keep, who's a cognitive scientist. And they are going to introduce to you the concept of desirable difficulties.
The topic of desirable difficulties started interesting me, because desirable difficulties, it's actually indeed quite close to deliberate practice. And deliberate practice is about the type of actual exercise a person does and how that relates to expertise development. It's an expertise development concept. Desirable difficulties is all about the learning conditions that foster long-term learning and skill development. So what is it how do we design education instruction in such a way that students, in fact, do not learn it just for now and for the exam tomorrow, but are able to use this information in the future, and hopefully also are able to use it in a different context. So this transfer question pops up again. How do we increase transfer? And this term was coined by Björk and Björk already some time ago, more than a decade ago, the desirable difficulties concept. And ever since, there's been quite some research on what desirable difficulties are. There's a very nice review paper by John Lasky and colleagues in 2013, and they reviewed hundreds of studies that were on what actually promotes long-term learning. And these learning strategies they mentioned were typically coined desirable difficulties. So one example is that we know that if you learn vocabulary or you learn from a text, and you're generally inclined to just go over these words or text multiple times, rereading, restudying them. But it's actually much more beneficial for your long-term learning if you start taking practice tests. So actually retrieving the information from memory very early on, much earlier than you would actually like, because it's too effortful and because you don't feel like you're learning.
So that was Ben Johnson's Perpetual Chess podcast. And the next time I heard about desirable difficulties was on Benjamin Keep's YouTube channel, someone I've been following already, and I noticed there was a bit of a crossover. So the 4 categories of desirable difficulty practice things, I'll let him introduce them to you, and I will then reference how I'm going to use each one of those.
Desirable difficulties are things that make learning harder in the short term, but result in longer lasting, durable, more flexible learning. The classic examples of desirable difficulties are spaced practice, interleaved practice, contextual variation, and testing. So spaced practice is when you space your practice sessions out or space your studying sessions out.
In that same podcast, Anique de Bruin mentions how repetition is important, which is common advice. It should be something you do over time, repeatedly. So I'll make sure to go over the same puzzles on CT Art 4.0 more than once. Once I've done all 2,200 puzzles, I will start again. I should be able to do it faster, woodpecker method style, and I will make sure I do all of them at least once more, maybe a third time.
Interleaved practice is when you mix up problem types that you're working on or category types that you're working on.
If interleaved practice is just mixing up the problem types that you face in your practice, me using CTR 4.0, I'll be doing themed puzzles, which isn't interleaved practice, but then any set of random puzzles is. So I should make sure to include random puzzles in my practice. Things like Puzzle Storm, Puzzle Streak, and random puzzles on Lichess. Lichess is great because you get unlimited free puzzles.
Contextual variation is where you see ideas in different contexts and are forced to, say, apply them in different contexts or vary the situations that you're practicing something in.
This one is the hardest to hit. The context of doing a puzzle is pretty fixed. I have an idea though. I can make all my training games in the next week about spotting tactics. So while playing every single one of my games, my daily games, I put an emphasis on trying to spot tactics, especially trying to spot tactics from afar, so I can spot situations where I can actually manipulate a game or manipulate a part of a game to make a tactic work. I've seen people, that's an advanced tactics skill, which I should eventually develop. So if I can say, if their queen was on this square, then I could later fork it with the knight. If that bishop moves, okay, let's make all that happen. Let's pull my opponent's queen onto that square. Let's get that bishop out of the way. Okay, finally, I've made the knight fork work, rather than just waiting for tactics to just magically appear on the board. That happens every so often, but it's better to force it.
Testing, that's just testing. There are still some things we don't know about why these techniques work, but the research consensus is that part of what makes all of these techniques work is retrieval. With spacing, you have to use retrieval because you've forgotten what you were learning and you need to remember it again, so that strengthens the retrieval path. With interleaving, some of the same things are going on. You have to activate different association networks alternately as you are looking at different kinds of problems. With contextual variation, again, you are kind of departing from a practice and then coming back to the practice again, so it involves some retrieval, some recall, some memory, and the same is true of testing.
Welcome to my week. Next 6 days, because we are in Monday right now, and I am going to rest on Sundays, so let's just look at the next 5 days. And I'm sure for the next couple of weeks it'll all look quite similar to this. We have swimming, breakfast, lunch, edit and upload, tea, which, because I'm from the north, that's just the same as dinner. So we have our 3 meals, edit and upload, and our swim. Okay, easy. Then I've given myself 8 hours, 45 minutes to do other things, chess in this case. So the 45 minutes is quite nice actually, because I will aim to do, for every hour of work, I'll try and have a 5-minute break. So I'll do 55 minutes of work and then 5 minutes of just getting up, moving my body, making sure I'm not sat down looking at a screen all day with the same focal range, etc. So just general good health, work hygiene. So you can just take away 45 minutes because that'll pretty much just be made up of breaks, little 5-minute breaks. I've got 8 hours to work with each day, which is quite a lot. It's an incredible amount of time, obviously. And I'm going to base the chunks, I'm going to base the actual work I do in that time on the desirable difficulties we just spoke about and the Chess Dojo recommendations. And that's pretty much it. So I'll take away these. What will tomorrow look like? Well, I've already made them so I'd have to type them out in front of you. So I have 2 sessions of solving themed puzzles. I've color coded them as I've got the color coding in my Toggle time tracking app, so I can keep a sense of what it is. Purple is solving puzzles. So I'm going to solve themed puzzles. As we mentioned, that's not going to help my interleaved practice, but it will help me learn patterns. It will help me learn how to annihilate the defense of the king. It will help me learn how to spot remove the defender type puzzle type tactics. But doing those won't help me very much in spotting those in a real game because I won't know to be looking for remove the defender type tactics. That's okay. I'm going to learn the patterns
in these sessions. I'm going to go through all 2,200 puzzles in this app, CT Art. And it's CT Art 4.0 if you're interested. I have just the iPhone version, which is a few pounds, like £8. And then if you want it on your computer, you have to spend like $50 or something. I think that's the idea. I think I may get that just so I can share it on a screen and show you, but I otherwise would just use it on my phone, which is reasonably cheap. Then, sticking with the solving puzzles idea, I'm then going to solve random puzzles on Lichess. There are 3 categories of random puzzles. There's going to be Puzzle Storm, Puzzle Racer, I think it's called, and then just general puzzles. Puzzle Storm is doing as many as you can in a certain time frame, like 3 or 5 minutes. I'm mixing things up. The second one wasn't meant to be Racer. It's Puzzle Storm, as I just described, and then Puzzle Streak, which is basically no time limit, just try not to get any wrong. How many can you get in a row correct? And then lastly, just doing puzzles, and then you get a certain rating for it, and there's no streak involved. If you get one wrong, you lose some rating. If you get one right, you gain rating, similar to playing games. I'll choose between one of those 3 types of random puzzles. Random because I could get any kind of puzzle. It could be a mate in 3, it could be a remove the defender, it could be a annihilate the defense of a king, all those things, all those different kinds of puzzle. And what that does is it does allow me to do interleaved practice because I'm doing lots of different problem types in the same session. Okay. From the Chess Dojo, I have this book to read. Read Winning Chess Tactics by Yasser Sarawan. So each day I'll probably try and read for about 1 or 1.5 hours of that. That involves lots of trying tactics as well. So I'll be sat with a real board or I'll be just trying to do it in my head. And then each day I'd like to play a classical game. As I said, I think what I'm going to try and do is pay special attention to tactics. Try and force tactics to happen and just make sure that I miss as few tactics as possible. If I can, I'll miss none. And if I can, I'll make some amazing moves and I'll be very impressed with myself. But if I don't do either of those things, I will notice it in the analysis and I will make a special effort of writing down my mistakes, specifically tactical mistakes or tactical misses. Okay, that's a day. What I'll do is jumble the order of those now and make sure that each day isn't exactly the same. But I think for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I should be doing something like this. We have a week. It looks a bit of a mess and there's a lot of purple, but that's okay. We'll see. I think it's okay at this point. I've broken up the week, the next 4 days to try and make them not so exactly the same, but they all contain, they're all the same pieces, just in different positions. And I have given myself most of Saturday afternoon off and then all of Sunday off. All right, that's pretty much it. Roll on tomorrow.